tales of fortune, ghost towns round another bend. Tanks half empty, but I'm rolling, chasing dreams I'll never know. In this hard land, I've been searching for a place to call my own.
Broadcasting live from Site B, located in the mythical town of Fresno, Nevada. It's your favorite demigod, the OGGM. It's Thursday. It's October 2nd. It's Yom Kippur for all of us Jews out there. It's the day to atone for our sins and beg the universe for forgiveness and try and become a better person, which we're trying to do every day over here at the OGGM Adventures. Today, we're doing another one. We're doing another dive into the box of games that we picked up from that huge Bumble Humble. 51 games. We've been through about half. Now we're focusing on the ones that are superhero-ish. So we're looking at Scion. Scion is another product from the Whitewolf Storypath, Catalyst Games, Renegade Press collection of stuff. It's basically Percy Jackson, the role-playing game. Americangods, the role-playing game. It's sort of like the Xmen, but without the costumes. It asks the question this was like 2022, but whatever. In modern day, 2025 Earth, and there's descendants of gods, and they're doing stuff. And how does the universe of normal people react to the presence of supernatural entities? And do these supernatural entities know they're gods? And what are they doing besides living life? I mean, I guess it questions the idea, well, maybe some of these really mega superstars who don't make sense are mega superstars because they're divine, like, Taylor Swift or Oprah. They seem to have almost supernatural abilities, in the way they can just generate fandom. What about like super athletes like Will Ospreay or people like that who just seem to be able to perform impossible feats of physical activity? Could they be somehow related to the divine in some weird, wacky way? Well, we're going to ignore most of this because it's Storypath, so we know to expect a lot of fluff and a lot of wasted pages on stuff, because that's what these books like to do. They want to make sure that they're worth the $50, $60, $80 that you're spending, which some people appreciate. A lot of people appreciate the stories and the fluff, but having grown up in the 80s with not a lot of money, I feel my game needs to tell me everything I need to know about it, in 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 pages, Villains and Vigilantes. Shadowdark. So let's see what it says on the back, and hopefully it explains. Also, my computer's being really weird today, so we'll see what happens. You are the child of a god. You are the child of a god, born of magic and the promise of yesterday and the promise of tomorrow. You live in a world of myth where every ancient story is true. Your ancient enemies, the Titans, stir in their prison beneath the land of the dead. Their spawn issues forth from the lands of myth, and the specter of war falls across the heaven. In the age of turmoil, you seize your birthright and feel the call of your blood, or you don't. Find your destiny, live the myth, embrace your fate. Scion is a game about gods and humanities and everything in between. It's a game about mythic deeds and reasons people talk about those mythic deeds. It details the Scions when they're still mostly human before the visitation that introduces them to the divine world. The exceptional humans, perhaps blessed with luck and skill, or cursed with ill fortune and strange trials in their lives, but humans nonetheless. The core rules and characterization information, an in-depth look at the basic setting, i.e. today, the major players, the gods, the titans, and legendary creatures, and how they manifest in the world today. So really, 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 it's Percy Jackson. If you're familiar with the Percy Jackson books, it's Percy Jackson meets the Xmen. Let's see. Okay, come on. Why aren't you working? It's from Storypath, so we start with a story. Then we get the table of contents. This one is 178 pages, and it features, is it just Greek myth, or does it cover all the myths? Some of the pantheons has got the Norse, the Algonquin, the Greco-Roman, the Egyptian, the Japanese, the Irish, the Oshiri, the gods of South Asia, the Chinese gods, and the Aztec gods. So it does include other gods besides just Greek, and yet it seems to be using Greece as the discount because of, I guess, Percy Jackson and Americangods mostly dealt with Greek and Norse mythology and Roman mythology. So interesting that would be the default, considering you're in the United States. And you would think maybe, I don't know, maybe the gods of United States mythology would be more appropriate than the gods of Greek and Roman mythology, right? I mean, but, you know, immigrants. They talk about that in Americangods and Percy Jackson. You know, the immigrants brought their gods with them. And the United States is a country made up of people from other places. So I guess it makes sense that the default are the Norse and the Roman and the Greek. Plus, you know, people just know the Romans and the Greek mythology and the Norse mythology. You know, it's ingrained in our pop culture DNA. We know who Zeus is. We know who Hercules is. We know who Thor is. We have any idea who Krillim is or Raven is or any of the others guys? No, but pop culture has just inundated us with those three big ones. Egyptian gets a little love, you know, Ra and Set. But yeah, so I guess it makes sense that those would be the ones that are the main focus because they're the ones most people know and associate with, as opposed to, say, you know, the American Southwest or whatever, or South America, places that would actually have, you know. So we deal with the themes, moves, blah, blah, blah. Blah, blah, blah. Media, the pantheons, the lexicon, what do the terms mean? You know, how do you transition in this world? How does the world react to all this supernatural stuff going on? You know, I mean, here we've got Thor, basically, or some god facing a giant lion. All the myths are true. This is the world, but not the world. And how does the real world deal with this? Like it talks about right here, it talks about, okay, you know, the Greek mythology is, and then Roman mythology, and right across the ribbon is, you know, from Rome is the Vatican, the home of the Catholic Church. So how do they interact between the old temples and Rome and the Catholic Church? So the history of the world, the rulership of the world, how God and the mythologies interact. Here's you know, old Zeus trying to pick somebody up. Modern mythology, explaining things, you know, that all these heroic individuals throughout history, like Alexander the Great, or you know, people who don't make sense who suddenly became, you know, popular, you know, or whatever, they're all just seeded with the divine. So lots of ideas that are fun to play with, that basically, you know, does it need that much room? Oh, cults. Cults is something you don't think about in the world with superhumans. You know, in the world of superheroes, are there cults dedicated to worshiping or destroying the cult, the super beings, or thinking, oh, these are, you know, divine things and we have to follow the teachings of Saint Spider-Man or whatever. More stuff, a lot of world building, and how the real world and the mythical world interact, which would be, I guess, the big selling point of this game. It would be, how does this work, right? I mean, we could ignore all the math stuff because we know the Storypath system. Basically, the question of this game is, how does this work, and is this something you want to play? What is my incentive as a player to play in this game other than, hey, it's superheroes, but we're not calling it superheroes? Because basically that's what it is. You know, it's superheroes, superhumans, but we're not calling it superheroes. We don't really wear costumes, though. Let's face it, if somebody in the real world suddenly got superpowers, they would either use it to benefit themselves, or, having been inundated with pop culture, by the time 2025 rolls around, they'll be like, yeah, I'm putting on a costume and fighting crime, or I'm putting on a costume and committing crimes, more likely. I'm going to use these powers to better my life. Why am I wearing the costume? Because I don't want to endanger the people in my life who don't have powers. So if I'm going to rob a bank, I'm going to rob a bank dressed up like this persona that I'm making, because it's just more fun and I don't endanger people. And if I'm a good person, it's like, yeah, I'm going to go do charitable events, but I don't want to endanger people I know. So sure, I'm wearing a costume. I'm wearing a cape. I'm wearing a mask. If this happened in the real world, I think those would be the two things that would happen. We would have people who just use it to better themselves and be really, really good at their job, whether it's Will Ospreay level athletes who just, you see these athletes perform these impossible feats. You know, how can that guy run so fast? How can she, perform those gymnastics? How can he stay underwater that long? How can he read that fast? How can he make this technology? Super smart people, super strong people, super fast people, people who are exceptionally good at things, who, whether it be politics or theater or acting, just the world is filled with people who, with a little thinking, you could explain as superhumans. You just watch these people and watch the things, and you're like, yeah. So that would probably be it. And then there would probably be a small percentage who was like, I've got superpowers. I can lift a car. I can talk to rocks. Fuck yeah, I'm robbing a bank. And then there would be the small percentage who grew up on comic books who would be like, no, I'm going to be a superhero. I've got these powers. Of course I'm going to be a superhero. What else would I do with them? So that would be my question about this game. What do these people do? Why am I playing this game? What is the plot? Is the plot just to protect the Earth from these ancient supernatural entities because the military can't or won't? Again, that sounds like superheroes. Why are you doing this? Because normal military might can't do it. The military can't fight Cthulhu, but I can. The military can't fight vampires, but I can. Right? I mean, otherwise, yeah, okay. I'm the child of a god, and there are ancient threats that are rising up, and I'm destined to fight them. I also live in 2025 Earth, and I'm well aware of the type of force that the military and the police can bring to bear. So unless this is like a third world country that doesn't have a military, I think they've got this covered, because, 100 zombies versus one Hellfire missile? My money's on the Hellfire missile. My money's on the tanks. Why should I do this? Maybe it's like Power Rangers. Maybe it happens in a separate reality where these larger than life fights happen and the Earth feels the reverberations of them. But the minute you enter into the super time or the supernatural, a lot of Sentai and a lot of Tokusatsu have explored this idea. Like, once that supernatural occurs, it kind of shifts to another universe. and then we in our universe feel the the repercussions, and then when it's over and they morph back, they switch back to reality. That's why, like, the fight starts in one place, but then suddenly we're in a parking garage or we're in a rock quarry. In reality, it's because it was easier to film there, but the explanation is these fights happen in a slightly separate universe, but the real world feels the repercussion. And as a supernatural entity, you're the only individual that could enter that world and fight these fights. And you're sort of just drawn into this never-ending battle. And then when you're not fighting them, you use your powers to either directly or indirectly affect the real world, and you become a politician or whatever. So yeah, I see a lot of world building and a lot of how, but the real question is, how does this affect the real world? Why does this happen? Stuff like that. Then some more storytelling. Then the Storypath system. We know the Storypath system. We've looked at it tons of times. If you're familiar with it's the D10 dice pool system that they use. So yeah, we're going to just skip all this and get back to the world building. Why am I doing this? Character creation. So we've got an example character, and then we've got, like, here we go. So here's an example. This guy's parrot is Thor, and this is the different things he gets. Here's another one. So we got a couple example characters. Each one from a different, like, trope. And, like, here he goes. Here's somebody who's using their godlike entity powers to, be a rap star. This guy's got no talent. How is he making so much money? And then there's an example of how they build this character using this system. I love that. I love the examples. Harry Dresden. So yeah, this is something we've looked at this. We know the Storypath system, and again, we're not reviewing systems. That's not what this is. If you want me to review the system, that's something we could do in another video. But this is reviewing the idea. As I always say, this is me walking into the game store. I see the game on the shelf. I'm flipping through it. What do I like? What do I don't like? What questions am I throwing at this game that does the book answer it? Is this something I want to play? And I do like this idea. It's an interesting take on superheroes. Percy Jackson. It's Percy Jackson. I mean, let's face it. It's Percy Jackson. Percy Jackson meets the Xmen. How would a world of Percy Jackson work? And why? Why involve myself, even if I am the Scion of Thor or whatever? Why do this? Why am I don't care. Okay, I'm the son of a god, and I've suddenly been made aware that this exists. But yeah, and other than, hey, I have these powers and I'm probably going to use them to make my life better, because let's face it, most of us would. So what? Why do I have to engage in this battle? Is there some incarnate threat that makes it so I have to do this? Is it like some just ingrained in our DNA that we have to fight? That we're just, it's just so part of our bloodline? Or is it just that the threats are so prevalent and we're the only ones that can stop it? You could be a greedy, selfish, vile human being, but when the choice is, if I don't step up, everything I know and love is destroyed. So I could be a greedy, vile human being. I could be Vandal Savage, but I'm still going to step up and protect the world if I have to, because I like being a vile, greedy savage in the world. And if the world's gone, I can't do this anymore. So yeah, the way too much space wasted on the system, and then another story. and then how to tell the story. What is your role as the DM? Blah, blah, blah. How do I roll this? Yeah, urban fantasy. It's urban fantasy. Just with superheroes, but you don't call them superheroes. And how, that's the bull on Wall Street. So I guess this is suggesting that the bull on Wall Street, if you looked at it through the superhuman veil, is actually a Gorgon that's been trapped, in that position. So again, how does this reflect in the real world? Here's a bunch of people just taking pictures of the bull on Wall Street, but she, being a member of the supernature, can see the bull of Wall Street for what it truly is. More of the same. We see one thing, the supernature sees a different thing. How the supernature edits itself into the real world. What kind of antagonists are there? Besides vampires and werewolves and stuff like that, which would all exist in this world. If every myth is true, this world's a mess. And it's kind of contradictory. I mean, every myth couldn't be true because a lot of the myths contradict each other. You can't have mythology A and mythology B both existing in the same place because they're so contradictory to each other. And if they both actually happened, wouldn't they just wiped each other out? I mean, some evolve. Greek becomes Roman. Roman becomes something else. That becomes something else. That becomes what we know more or less as the foundations of the Roman Catholic Church. The many gods become a few gods. The few gods become one god. We accept the one God as the one true God. And then we explain that all these other stories were actually either just stories or manifestations of the one true God. The adventures of Odysseus become Moses, or just they never happened. How does Christianity explain the tales of Greek myth? So they were just stories people were telling to explain stuff. But it was all the work of the one true God. So yeah, there would be a lot of mythologies that would just contradict each other, and the world would be in a much greater mess than it was if all these mythologies were happening at the same time. So do we have some example bad guys? So here's Centaur. So how would the centaurs be seen in the real world? So eat, drink, and be merry. Percy Jackson was that he was in a wheelchair, right? The centaur. So you never saw his legs, and then when he got out of the wheelchair, it's like, oh, I'm not a 180-pound human male in a 5-10-pound machine. I'm a 400-pound horse. That was some supported by this machine. And the fact that you saw me as a human in a wheelchair was just that wouldn't work. You can't put a horse in a wheelchair. But magic says you can. So yes, magic is the cheat code of the universe, and the existence of magic allows you to hand wave a lot of these things and how the world would see them. I feel like I'm just sort of referring to Percy Jackson. I don't know. Did I read Percy Jackson? Or am I just referring to the TV show and the movie? The whole thing of the veil. So yeah, it's an interesting take on modern day supernatural. It's an interesting take on superheroes. It's Percy Jackson meets superheroes. The questions, of course, when playing this game is there an audience? Would people go for it? And then how do you just motivate them to maintain that quasi-heroic path when, let's face it, most of us, if we were suddenly given superpowers, would probably become criminals, or we would just use it to better our own lives by becoming actors or athletes or whatever, or politicians. And, you know, we wouldn't really, unless forced, would we really involve ourselves in this battle with our fellow supernatural? Or we just be like, whatever. You do you, dude, as long as you're not bothering me. So there just either would have to be so many and so many things going on. And the whole idea that whether you like it or not, you are just somehow the only one who can see this, the only one who can do anything about it. And you are sort of instinctively driven to be part of this never ending battle. If you're, you know, if you're Norse and you know, most of the mythologies all end up with the world being destroyed, with some type of final battle. You know, Catholicism talks about the rapture, but a lot of the other mythologies all sort of have an end of the world. Most well known, of course, is Ragnarok, but the other ones too. And the other, you know, the ones that don't have an end of the world just talk about how the gods were just driven off or drifted away. And, you know, because of the one true God came along and sent them. Arthurian myth talks about the end of the age of fairy and the coming of the age of man. Tolkien talks about the end of the third age and the coming of the fourth age and the end of the age of elves and magic and the coming of the age of man in Gondor, and how those, you know, just that goes away. It's hiding behind the veil. All these stories and cartoons all sort of address the same thing, be it Dresden or whatever. So this is just, does Percy Jackson work at a game? And I'm obviously interested enough that I've talked about it for 27 minutes here. So yeah, I would say there's definitely a curiosity. It's definitely interesting concept. It's new, it's different. It's a different take on superheroes, or, you know, for being Percy Jackson. The question is, what would you do if you got superpowers? And how would you run this game? Do you want to play this game? Do you want to buy this game? I'm curious enough that I'd want to check it out. I don't know if I'd want to use the Storypath system because it's just overly chunky, to be overly chunky just to justify the length of these books. You know, 60 pages of character creation is too much. But obviously, as one of the most popular role-playing games on the world, you know, out there, Vampire, it's consistently in the top 10. There is people out there who are fine with the 60-page character creation, who are fine with the chunk. They like the world building. They love the world building. Vampire, Storypath succeeds or fails on the world building, on the fluff. And there's enough interest there that people, I think, would be at least curious of playing modern day. You know, yeah, it's Stranger Things, but the kids with Stranger Things have grown up, but they're still dealing with the same things. But for some weird reason, they're the only ones who can deal with it. You know, there is this never-ending, nonstop battle to prevent the destruction of the world that's going on behind the veil. How do you stop it? And is it just another superhero role-playing game that you just don't wear a costume? I think I've shown enough that there's enough interested that if it's your kind of thing, you might want to check it out. There's a link down below if you want to go to drive through and get your own copy of Scion. You could use the link and get that way. I guess Vorpalbite won't be looking at my superhero system, then I might make it. Yeah. So is there a market for this? And I think there's enough. So you use the link down below to support the OGGM, or if you don't want to, but you still want to support me because it's the holidays, there's a whole bunch of other ways you can support me. I've got a Patreon going up for where I'm putting all the product I'm working on for right now that you can choose to support. I've got the Ko-Fi. I've got the Only Crits Dice affiliate link where you could get yourself a set of Only Crits Dice and support me. Only Crits, the only dice approved and tested by Steve the Cat. So yeah, if you feel like you appreciate the stuff that I do and want to support me, every little bit helps. This is my job, and the holidays are coming up, and Steve with the Cat apparently wants to eat. I don't know. Till next time, have a great day. Take care of yourselves. See ya.
Neon signs, they guide my journey. Broken streets and tired bars. Every stranger tells a story. Every corner hides a scar. Desert